Hi, Cornerstone Kids. It's Mrs. Fairbanks. I have a story. It's a really good story that I want to read to you. And then at the end of that story, I have several questions that I'm going to ask you to kind of think about how the characters felt during the story. So think about all of the characters. There's several different characters. There's one group of boys and another little boy that the story follows. There's a grandma. So try to think about as many of the characters in the book as you can, and then I'll ask you questions at the end. Okay? This book is called Those Shoes. Okay. Grandma, I want them. There's no room for want around here, just need. Grandma says, and what you need are new boots for the winter. Brandon T comes to school in those shoes. He says he's the fastest runner now, not me. I was always the fastest runner before those shoes came along. Nate comes to school in those shoes too. Antonio and I count how many times Nate goes to the bathroom. 7 times in one day, just so he can walk up and down the hall real slow. Next, Alan Jacoby and Terrence each get a pair. Then one day in the middle of kickball, one of my shoes comes apart. Looks like you could use a new pair, Jeremy, Mr. Alfrey, the guidance counselor, says. He brings out a box of shoes and other stuff he has for kids who need things. He helps me find the only shoes that are my size. Velcro, like the ones my little cousin Marshall wears. They have an animal on them from a cartoon I don't think any kid ever even watched. When I come back to the classroom, Alan Jacoby takes one look at my Mr. Alfrey shoes and laughs. So do Terrence, Brandon T, and everyone else. The only kid not laughing is Antonio Parker. At home, Grandma says, "How kind of Mr. Alfrey." I nod and turn my back. I am not going to cry about some silly old shoes. But when I'm writing my spelling words later, every word looks like the word shoes. And my grip is so tight on my pencil, I think it might burst. On Saturday, Grandma says, "Let's check out those shoes you're wanting so much. I got a little bit of money set aside. Might be enough. You never know." At the shoe store, Grandma turns those shoes over so she can check the price. When she sees it, she sits down really heavily. "Maybe they wrote it down wrong," I say. Grandma shakes her head. Then I remember the thrift shops. Wait, if there's a rich kid who outgrew his or got 2 pairs for Christmas and had to give them away, we could find some. We ride the bus to the first thrift shop. Black cowboy boots, pink slippers, sandals, high heels, every kind of shoe except for those shoes. We ride the bus to the second thrift shop, not a pair of shoes in sight. Around the corner is the third thrift shop. I see something in the window. Black shoes with 2 white stripes, high tops, perfect shape, $2.50. Those shoes. My heart is pounding hard as I take off my shoes and hitch up my baggy socks. "How exciting," Grandma says. "What size are they?" I shove my foot into the first shoe, curling my toes to get my heel in. I don't know, but I think they fit. Grandma kneels on the floor and feels for my toes at the end of my shoe. "Oh, Jeremy," she says, "I can't spend good money on shoes that don't fit." I pull the other shoe on and try to walk around. "They're okay," I say, holding my breath and praying that my toes will fall off right there. But my toes don't fall off. I buy them anyway, with my own money, and I squeeze them on and limp to the bus stop. At home a few days later, Grandma puts a new pair of snow boots in my closet and doesn't say a word about my 2 big feet shuffling around the house and my 2 small shoes. "Sometimes shoes stretch," I say. Grandma gives me a hug. "I check every day, but those shoes don't stretch. I have to wear my Mr. Alfrey's to school instead. One day during math, I glanced at Antonio's shoes. One of them is taped up, and his feet look smaller than mine. After school, I head to the park to think. Antonio is there, the only kid who didn't laugh at my Mr. Alfred shoes. We shoot baskets. A loose piece of tape on Antonio's shoe smacks the concrete every time he jumps. I think, I'm not gonna do it. We leap off the swings. I'm not gonna do it. What do you think's happening to his heart? Is the Holy Spirit working on his heart to change it? I think so. We race from one end of the playground to the other. I'm not gonna do it, I say. Do what? Antonio says, breathing hard. Grandma calls me for supper and invites Antonio over too. After supper, he spies my shoes. How come you don't wear them? Antonio asks. I shrug. My hands are sweaty. I can feel him wishing those shoes were his. That night, I'm awake for a long time thinking about Antonio. When morning comes, I try on my shoes one last time. Before I can change my mind, the shoes are in my coat. Snow is beginning to fall as I run across the street to Antonio's apartment. I put the shoes in front of his door, push the doorbell, and run. Did he obey what God was calling his heart to do? At school, Antonio is smiling big in his brand new shoes. I feel happy when I look at his face and mad when I look at my Mr. Alfrey shoes. But later, when it's time for recess, something happens. Everywhere there is snow. Leave your shoes in the hall and change into your boots, the teacher announces. Leave your shoes in the hall? It's then I remember what I have in my backpack. New boots. New black boots that no kid has ever worn before. Standing in line to go to recess, Antonio leans forward and says, Thanks. I smile and give him a nudge. Let's race. Wasn't that such a good book? Okay, so here's your questions. My first one is, why do Terrence and Brandon laugh at Jeremy? So when he walks in that first day in the classroom with his Mr. Alfrey's on, why do those boys laugh? What do you think their heart was feeling? Why? What would motivate them to make fun of Jeremy? Okay. Your second question is, why do you think that Jeremy wants those shoes? Is it because he thinks that his feet are going to be really super comfortable in those shoes? Or do you think maybe he's just maybe wants them because all of his friends want them? Okay. And then the second part of that question is that I want you to think to yourself, what would God want you to do? Okay. Does God want us to live for the approval of what other people think? Or does God want us to listen and seek his approval alone? Okay. I think you know what the answer would be for that one. Okay. How do you think that grandma feels through all of this? Okay. So she knows that her grandson really wants those shoes. And she knows too that it's just wouldn't be responsible to use money to buy something that he doesn't truly need. Right. So how do you think that makes grandma feel though? Okay. The next question is, have you ever wanted something just because your friends make it seem really cool and awesome? Okay. And then also, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is, how can you remember this story when you are wanting an item that a friend has? All right. So go ahead and think about all those questions, pray about it, and see where God's leading your heart. Okay. And I will see you next week. Bye.